It had always just been the two of them. They spoke every day. Texted, called, joked. Every morning, Margaret got a "Good luck today, Mom" text. And every night, at 10:30 sharp, James would say, "Sleep safe. Love you." That pattern never broke. Until the week before Halloween, 2011. On October 24th, James sent his usual "Sleep safe" message. October 25th, no message. October 26th, total silence. Margaret knew something was wrong by the second morning. She called repeatedly. No answer. She reached out to his roommate, who assumed James had gone home early for the weekend. But James wasn't home. And by the third day, a missing person report was filed. Discovery. 3 days after James disappeared, police located his body. It was found in a dense, wooded patch just outside the University District. No sign of a struggle. No visible trauma. No evidence of drugs or foul play. The coroner's report listed cause of death as sudden cardiac failure, rare but not impossible. He had no known conditions. No medication. No warning. His phone, wallet, and coat were missing. His pockets were empty. When Margaret saw him in the morgue, she said, "He just looks tired. Not dead." She refused to believe it had simply happened. James had no reason to be in those woods. He hated the cold. He never went jogging. He always told her his schedule. Always. Something was off. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. The voicemail. At 3:19 a.m., the morning after James's funeral, Margaret's phone buzzed. Half asleep, she checked the screen. Incoming call. James Redhart. She stared at the name. She thought she must be dreaming. The phone stopped ringing. No voicemail alert. But when she opened her inbox, it was there. Voicemail 011. She pressed play. Then James's voice. Weak, desperate. "Mom, please answer." She dropped the phone. She played it again. Again. And again. It was James. His real voice. Not a sound alike. Not edited. She sat in bed until sunrise, shaking. Tracing the impossible. That same morning, Margaret took the phone to the police. They contacted James's mobile provider. What they found made no sense. James's number was officially disconnected at 2:01 p.m., 2 hours before the funeral. The number had no active SIM card. The signal didn't pass through any tower relay. Their report simply stated, "The source of the call cannot be determined." One technician off the record told Margaret, "We've seen anomalies before. Mostly in ghost stories, we laugh them off. But this one was injected. Like someone forced it into the system from nowhere." Digging deeper, Margaret became obsessed. She joined online forums about paranormal phone calls, EVP phenomena, phantom signals. She found dozens of similar cases. A father in Dublin who received a photo from his dead son's number. A woman in Ontario who got a voicemail 8 years after her fiancé's funeral, whispering her name. A teenager in Jakarta who swore he answered a FaceTime call from his grandmother, 2 nights after she died. Every case had one thing in common. No source. No relay. No record. Margaret uploaded the voicemail. Paranormal researchers contacted her. One of them, a sound engineer named Felix Granger, asked to analyze the waveform. He discovered something chilling. There was a second voice buried under James's. Slowed down and amplified, it whispered, "He's not yours anymore." The jacket and the tunnel. 6 months later, a hiker found a torn navy jacket wedged in brambles by an abandoned railway tunnel, 26 miles from James's university. Inside the pocket, James's student ID. His cracked iPhone. No SIM card. No battery. But when investigators opened the iPhone's local storage, one file had survived. A photograph. Dark. Blurry. Mostly black. But with some adjustment, a scene emerged. A stone tunnel wall. A bare hand reaching toward the lens. and in the shattered reflection of the phone's screen, a face. Half human, half blank. Its mouth stretched open, but no eyes. James was clearly holding the phone. But he wasn't taking a selfie. The angle suggested he was trying to document something behind him. Margaret collapsed when she saw it. Patterns in the static. Over the next few months, Margaret began hearing things, brief static bursts in her car radio at the exact time James used to text her. Her laptop would open the same folder every night at 10:30 p.m. Her TV turned itself on once, volume at max, displaying only the words, "I'm still here." Margaret asked Felix to analyze EMF levels in her house. He reported spikes at random intervals, always around 3 a.m. On a hunch, he returned to the voicemail and reversed the audio. When played backward at half speed, the second voice changed. No longer a whisper, but a growl. This time it said, "Leave. Now." Chapter 8, Letting Go. Margaret moved out a week later. She changed numbers. Deleted social media. She never gave interviews again. But she gave Felix permission to release the voicemail file, with a warning. "It's real. Don't try to explain it. Just let it go." To this day, the voicemail is archived online. Skeptics say it's a hoax. Phone techs say it's glitch folklore. But no one has ever successfully explained how a call came from a number that no longer existed, through no tower, from a phone with no battery, taken 26 miles away from where James died. There are stories you want to believe are fiction. Because if they're not, then everything you know about life, death, and connection might be wrong. And sometimes, when your phone rings at 3 a.m., you don't want to answer. Because it might be someone who shouldn't be able to call you anymore. Transmission that never ended. You might think ghosts are quiet. That they only exist in creaky attics, in the darkened hallways of forgotten houses, or in the soft whispers behind your ear when you're alone. But what if I told you that some ghosts speak through sound? Through signals? Through frequencies? And what if one of them was still broadcasting? This is not a ghost story. This is a broadcast. And this broadcast began with a song request. And ended with silence so loud, it tore a man's soul apart. Welcome to the Graveyard Shift. In the fall of 2013, Evan Price, a 20-year-old communications major at Hanover College, picked up what he thought would be the easiest job in the world, a graveyard shift DJ at the campus radio station, WZRP 89.3 FM. The slot ran from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., Monday through Friday. 3 hours of late-night music programming. No audience, no pressure. Just background sound for night owls and insomniacs. The station was located in the sub-basement of Blake Hall, an old building partially shut down after a fire in the 1980s. Most students didn't even know the radio station existed. It ran on aging analog equipment, barely maintained, and funded only by scraps from the communications department. For Evan, it was perfect. He could bring in his vinyl collection, play jazz or lo-fi, and mix experimental stuff without anyone complaining. It was quiet. Solitary. Peaceful. Until it wasn't. The first call. It happened on his third night. October 11th. 2:13 a.m. The phone rang. Not his cell. The landline. The one mounted on the wall above the desk, dusty, ancient, and disconnected from the campus main line since 2004. Yet it rang. A hollow, shrill ring that sliced through the ambient jazz like a razor. Evan stared at it, unsure what to do. Then, curiosity got the better of him. He picked up. "WZRP," he said. There was a pause. Then, a calm male voice, smooth and measured. "Hi. Is this the night shift?" Evan blinked. "Yeah. Who's calling?" Another pause. Then, "I'm in room 405. Can you play Blue Velvet for me?" Click. Dead air. Evan stared at the receiver. Room 405? There was no room 405. That part of Blake Hall had been sealed for nearly 30 years. After the fire. Daniel Crow. The next morning, Evan asked around. A janitor named Marvin, who had been with the college since the 80s, gave him a strange look when he mentioned room 405. "You heard that name?" Marvin asked, pale. "You must have read some old archives. Kid named Daniel used to live there." Daniel Crow. Music major. Vinyl junkie. One of the original student DJs for WZRP. In 1986, a fire broke out in Blake Hall. The fire started on the 4th floor. But only one room burned. Room 405. Daniel was found sitting upright in his chair. Headphones on. Vinyl still spinning. No signs of panic. No burns. No smoke damage outside the room. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. But Marvin swore he saw something else. His eyes were missing. He whispered. Not burned. Just empty. A song like a ritual. That night, Evan dug through the vinyl archive. There it was. A worn copy of Blue Velvet by Bobby Vinton. He played it. 2:13 a.m. came. And everything changed. The lights dimmed. The signal meter twitched. A static hum built in the walls. Then footsteps. Above him. The studio was in the basement. There was no upstairs. He looked around. Nothing. Then the phone rang again. "Thank you," the voice said. "It helped. But it's not enough. He still wants out." Evan slammed the phone down. The silence between songs. Over the next week, Evan noticed a pattern. Any time he didn't play Blue Velvet, the static returned. The mic clicked on by itself. Equipment glitched. Once, his headphones exploded in his ears. He began recording everything. The logs showed anomalies. Reversed audio. Time skips. And in one 6-second clip, a voice not his own. The dead dream in static. Evan started having nightmares. He saw a man, face melted, eyes gone, mouth wide, sitting in the DJ booth. Just sitting. Waiting. Don't stop the music. Evan tried to quit. He emailed the station manager. No reply. He unplugged the turntables. They powered back on. He stopped going to the booth, but the shows still aired. Same playlists. Same transitions. He wasn't there. But someone, or something, was still broadcasting. Then, on October 24th, the station aired Blue Velvet. 37 times in a row. No DJ logged in. No automation set. And yet the studio lights were on. When Evan returned the next night, there was a sticky note on the mic. Don't stop the song. It sleeps when it plays. A visit to room 405. Driven by obsession, or fear, Evan broke into the east wing. It was a ruin. Peeling wallpaper. Rusted doors. Black mold. He found room 405 at the end of a warped hallway. The door was sealed with chains. Padlocked shut. But the walls vibrated. He leaned close. And he heard it. Blue Velvet. Playing softly. From the other side. Then the knob turned. From the inside. Evan ran. The next night, Evan checked the studio logs. He found a file marked autoarchive_405_1024.wave. The station didn't have an auto-archive system. Still, he clicked play. It began with Blue Velvet. Then a loop of soft humming. Then a voice, not his, not Daniel's, deeper, guttural. He walked into the silence. He didn't knock. So now we walk through him. The file cut to black. His ears rang for 10 minutes afterward. The sound that eats. The studio began to rot. Literal mold grew on the mic foam. Cables melted. Dials twisted by themselves. The radio signal no longer stayed within campus. Reports came in from towns 50 miles away, claiming to hear Evan's voice, when he hadn't gone on air. And always at 2:13 a.m. His voice distorted, warped. Laughing. Crying. Then whispering. Do you know how loud silence can scream? Evan tried staying away. But the station called to him, Literally. His phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Voicemails of static. Sometimes, breathing. Dr. Cates returns. Desperate, Evan contacted Dr. Lionel Cates again. The retired professor didn't want to talk. I told Daniel the same thing I'll tell you, he said. It's not about the sound. It's about what's between the sound. There's an intelligence in the white noise. A memory loop. It feeds on memory, on attention. You're giving it a platform. Stop broadcasting. Or it'll use you to go national. Then he hung up. The loop begins. October 31st. Halloween. Evan pre-recorded a mix. No live presence, just 3 hours of jazz. He stayed home. At 2:13 a.m. he tuned in. The tape was gone. Instead, a live broadcast played. His voice. Liv. Saying, "You can't lock the door if you are the door." He fainted. When he woke up, there was a USB drive on his nightstand. No label. One file. Let_me_play.wave. He never pressed play. The emergency signal. November 3rd. Every radio in Hanover, campus, car, home, bled the same broadcast. Evan's show. Even TVs. Even Bluetooth speakers not connected to anything. The signal had jumped. It wasn't just WZRP anymore. It was in the air. And at 2:13 a.m., it changed. A siren. Like an emergency alert. Then a voice. The monitor's display. The studio screamed. The walls cracked. Not quiet. Silent. Then the monitors went black. One word appeared. Again. The headmaster who never slept. Most people in Osaka have never heard of Hatsuroku Academy. And those who have, don't talk about it. But among certain circles, former students, old teachers, a few janitors with trembling hands, it's known as one of the most terrifying places in Japan that was never officially declared haunted. And the reason? Has nothing to do with the building. Not really. It's the headmaster. A man named Shigeki Yamura. This is the story of the headmaster who never blinked, never aged, and never slept. And the students who learned why. In the spring of 1999, a 15-year-old student named Yuto Hoshino transferred into Hatsuroku Academy. His father was a government engineer who had been relocated to Osaka from Tokyo, and his mother was recovering from surgery in the hospital. So, for the first time in his life, Yuto would be boarding alone at school. Hatsuroku was unlike anything Yuto had ever seen. Built into the forested outskirts of Osaka, the academy looked like a cross between an old temple and a European cathedral. Ivy crawled up the stone walls, owls nested in the bell tower, and the classrooms still used wooden chalkboards and desks from the Meiji era. The school had a certain charm, but also a heaviness. And almost immediately, Yuto noticed something strange about the students. They were silent. Obedient. Disciplined, yes, but too disciplined. During orientation, no one laughed. No one whispered. No one even seemed curious. And the strangest part? No one asked about the headmaster. On his first night, the dorm supervisor gave Yuto a printed handbook. There were rules about shoes, uniforms, class schedules. All typical. But one line was printed in red ink. Under no circumstance are students to enter the academic building before 7 a.m. Yuto raised his hand. Why not? The supervisor looked at him for a moment. Then said, You are here to learn discipline. The building also requires rest. Yuto blinked. I don't understand. You will. Or you won't. Just follow the rule. He walked away. It happened 3 days later. Yuto had trouble sleeping in his new bed, and at 5:45 a.m., he got up and looked out the window of his dorm. There, across the misty courtyard, he saw a single light on in the academic building. It was coming from the 3rd floor. And in that window, still, rigid, and completely alone, stood a figure. Tall. Wearing black. Facing the glass? The shape didn't move. It didn't pace. It didn't even seem to breathe. It just stood there. Staring. Yuto stared back. It didn't blink. He slowly backed away from the window. And the light went off. Yuto told one of his classmates, Haruki, what he saw. Haruki nodded slowly. You saw him? The headmaster? Yes. But not just him. Yuto was confused. What do you mean? There's a reason that rule exists. Why doesn't anyone talk about it? Because they forget. That night, Haruki was dared by a few senior students to enter the building at 6:30 a.m. He accepted. He wanted to prove to Yuto, and maybe to himself, that it was all just nonsense. Yuto watched from his dorm room window as Haruki crossed the courtyard. He saw him open the door. He waited. Minutes passed. Then, a scream. High-pitched. Choked. Then silence. Haruki was found an hour later in the school's old nurse's station. He had deep scratches on his face, and his eyes were wide open. He couldn't speak. He didn't respond. He was transferred to a hospital in Kyoto. And just like that, he was gone. No one brought him up again. Yuto couldn't let it go. He went to the school library and found old yearbooks. He flipped through them year by year. 1952. 1961. 1978. 1985. 1992. In every single staff photo, the same man stood in the center. Headmaster Shigeki Yamura. Same face. Same suit. Same expression. No gray hair. No wrinkles. Not even a change in posture. This is impossible, Yuto whispered. He checked the earliest photo in the archives. 1907. Still him. Late one night, Yuto was caught sneaking back into the dorms by an old janitor named Daichi. Instead of reporting him, Daichi sat down with Yuto behind the tool shed and lit a cigarette. You're not the first to ask questions. What is Yamura? Yuto asked. Daichi exhaled. Not what? When? He's older than the school. Some say older than the forest itself. But how? He doesn't sleep because sleep isn't for what he is. He's just wearing the shape of a man. Has anyone tried to stop him? One boy in 1959 tried to set fire to the office. He disappeared that night. They found a note under his bed. What did it say? It just said, "The walls are listening." Yuto never returned. His family left Osaka. But even after 10 years, he never forgot. Because he couldn't. Then, in 2011, a news story broke. An urban explorer disappeared while investigating an abandoned school in the Osaka forest. They found his camera. And the last frame showed a window on the 3rd floor. A man stood behind it. Black suit. Silver glasses. Staring. Waiting. The next day, Yuto packed a small bag, skipped class, and made his way to the main gate. It wasn't locked. It never had been. That should have been his first warning. He walked half a mile toward the train station. The wind picked up. The trees felt closer. When he reached the station, it was empty. No schedule, no sign of life. Not even birds. He waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Then he saw it, a train approaching. But as it came closer, he noticed it had no windows. No lights. No sound. It stopped. The door opened. Smoke poured out. And from within, he heard his own voice, whispering, "You were never here." He turned and ran. Back into the woods. Back to the only place that remembered him. Back inside the school, Yuto found an old, unused classroom in the west wing. Inside, he found names scratched into the walls, dozens of them. But most were illegible. Faded. Scratched out. Except for 3. T. Hasegawa. D. Nakamura. Y. Hoshino. How? He whispered. Behind him, a chalkboard cracked. Letters began writing themselves. Seat taken. Yuto descended one last time into the underground tunnel. But it wasn't the same tunnel. The stairs twisted. The air buzzed with static. Time seemed to dilate. He emerged into a wide chamber lined with books and mirrors. Yumura stood in the center, facing away. "Why me?" Yudo demanded. "Because you looked. And those who look must stay." "What are you?" Yumura turned. He no longer had a face. His voice came from everywhere. "I am not a man. I am the echo of forgetting. The school needs a keeper. I've been here long enough. You want me to replace you?" "Not want. Require." Mirrors surrounded him. And in each one, Yudo saw himself, older, colder, sitting behind a desk in a black suit. He screamed. He ran. But this time, the exit was open. Daichi was waiting outside the tunnel. "You have 5 minutes. Then the school forgets the door exists." Yuto didn't ask questions. He sprinted. Through the hallways. Past the chapel. Out the courtyard. He burst through the gate just as the morning bell rang. Behind him, the school faded. Not literally. Just subtly. Like it was never real. I met my grandfather. But he'd been dead for 2 years. The dead may rest in peace, but what happens when they return to finish something left undone? This story takes place in a quiet farming village in central Java, Indonesia. A place where traditions run deep, spirits are respected, and death isn't always the end. It began in August 2017, with a boy named Demas, who claimed he had seen and spoken with his grandfather, twice. That wouldn't be unusual, except his grandfather had been buried in the village cemetery 2 years earlier. Demas was 17. He lived with his mother in a modest wooden house near the edge of the rice fields. His father worked in Jakarta, and only came home a few times a year. His grandfather, Barahmith, had died suddenly in 2015 from a stroke. He'd been a well-respected Dukuan, an old village shaman. People had whispered about him for years, saying he could speak to the wind, heal people with leaves, and even see spirits. But to Demas, he was just a kind old man who taught him how to fish and told stories at night. So when Demas saw him again, standing at the edge of the rice field at dawn, he didn't feel scared. Just confused. The figure was clear. It wasn't a blur or dream. It was him. Barahmith was wearing his favorite brown batik shirt, holding a walking stick, smiling. He looked solid. "Kamu bilam bo like it," the old man said. "Masih ada yang harus kamu lakukan." "You're not allowed to follow yet. There's still something you must do." And then he vanished. That night, Demas had a dream. He was walking through the village, but everything was silent. Even the chickens and dogs were frozen. He came upon his grandfather's grave. Only it was open. Inside, instead of a body, was a bundle wrapped in white cloth and dripping with water. He woke up in sweat. Over the next 3 nights, the dreams intensified. One night, he saw himself digging into the soil beside the grave. Another, he saw a goat with human eyes staring at him through the window. And then, on the 4th night, he heard a voice whisper in his ear before he woke. "Find what I left behind." Demas went to his mother. She listened carefully, then looked around to make sure they were alone. "You shouldn't talk about him like that," she said. "The dead don't like being disturbed." "But he came to me." She paused. Then got up, walked to her bedroom, and came back with a rusted brass key. "He gave me this, before he died. Told me to give it to you when the time was right." "What does it open?" "I don't know. He said it's somewhere only you would find when your shadow walks backward." Demas didn't know what that meant. Until the next morning, when he saw his shadow pointing toward the old toolshed. But it was 6:30 a.m. and the sun was rising from the west. The toolshed was old and filled with farming tools, bamboo baskets, and cobwebs. But something about the floorboards felt off. In the back corner, Demas found a small iron ring hidden under a mat. He pulled. A square hatch opened, revealing a narrow stairway leading underground. He used his phone light to descend. The walls were stone. The air smelled of earth and something older, like cloves, salt, and burnt incense. At the bottom, he found a wooden chest with a lock that matched the key. He opened it. Inside were an old carrier's blade wrapped in silk, a book of handwritten Javanese script, and a dried flower tucked in parchment with the words, "If the seal breaks, return it to where it began." Suddenly, the light flickered. The air thickened. And behind him, Demas heard footsteps. But when he turned, no one was there. Just a whisper in his grandfather's voice. "Don't let it out." The next day, Demas brought the book and the carries to Paxuroto, the oldest man in the village. Paxuroto's hands trembled as he touched the blade. "Where did you get this?" Demas explained everything. The man looked pale. He lit a clove cigarette and sat in silence for several minutes. "Your grandfather," he said slowly, "was the last of the guardians. That carries is not a weapon, it is a seal. It holds something inside." "Something?" "A spirit. One of the ancient ones. Something older than our village. Your grandfather trapped it long ago, during the shadow floods." Demas was stunned. "Then why show himself to me now?" Paxuroto looked grim. "Because the seal is weakening." That night the chickens refused to enter their coop. Dogs howled endlessly toward the hills. The next morning, one of the villagers, Buerna, the herbalist, was gone. Her front door was wide open. Her kitchen light still on. The only thing left was a single footprint in the garden, burned into the soil. The village gathered. Some whispered about the old stories. Others tried to explain it away. Demas stayed quiet. At home, the carries had started humming. Low. Faint. Like it was alive. His dreams became worse. He now saw a dark figure crouching at the foot of his bed, watching him breathe. And one night, it spoke in a language he didn't know, but somehow understood. "One seal is broken. 2 more remain." And when he woke, his hands were covered in soil. More to follow: an attempt to reseal the entity, discovery of an ancient ritual site, confrontation with the spirit, and a final twist revealing what Mbarahmith left unfinished. The next morning, Paxuroto handed Demas a tattered map with faded ink. "The second seal is here," he said, pointing to a mark deep within the old riverbed, a place the villagers called Sungay Berbizik, the Whispering River. It had dried up decades ago, but the land still carried a strange energy. People claimed to hear voices near the rocks at night. Demas and Paxuroto trekked there at dawn. As they descended into the hollow river trench, the air grew cold. Windless, yet leaves rustled. They found the second seal, a stone altar carved with spirals and runes, half buried in mud. But someone had already been there. A satchel of fresh offerings lay broken. And red string, used in protective rituals, had been cut. The seal had already cracked. "Someone wants it open," Paxuroto muttered. "Who?" But before he could answer, a sound echoed through the ravine. Laughter. Childlike. Wrong. Demas turned. And saw someone standing at the top of the ridge. Smiling. It was his cousin Raka. Raka was only a year older than Demas. They'd grown up like brothers. But Raka had always resented Mbarahmith. "Old fool," he once said. "He should have passed his knowledge to me, not you." Now he stood, barefoot and calm, holding a piece of the broken red string. "You're too late," he said. "I already made the offering. It chose me." "What did?" Demas asked. "The spirit. The one he sealed. I set it free. It promised power. And you," he pointed at Demas, "you were never supposed to be the heir." "I was." Paxuroto began chanting, pulling Demas behind a rock. But the ground shook. The stones cracked. From the altar, black steam hissed up and formed into something humanoid. And found himself in a room made of mirrors. Each one showed a version of himself. A boy. A man. An old Dukuan. A shadow with eyes. And behind them all, the spirit. "We are bound," it said. "Forever. You carry me now. Then I'll carry you where you can't hurt anyone. You think that's your choice?" "No," Demas said. It was his. He reached out and touched the G. The pulsing stopped. No one ever found Demas. His house stood abandoned, vines curling through the windows. But sometimes, late at night, villagers say they see an old man walking the rice fields. Wearing a batik shirt. Carrying a carries. Smiling. / the room that wasn't on the floor plan. If you find a door that shouldn't exist, don't open it. Some spaces were never meant to be entered. In 2002, a small architecture firm in St. Petersburg, Russia, received a contract to renovate an abandoned Soviet-era hospital. The building, known as Hospital 41, had been shut down since 1987 after a mysterious fire destroyed its west wing. The hospital had a long and grim reputation. Built in 1951 under Stalin's orders, it was said to house not just the sick, but also political prisoners, military test subjects, and people too inconvenient for the regime. The renovation contract was straightforward: modernize the structure for a new psychiatric research facility. The firm assigned the job to a 26-year-old junior architect named Lev Malenkov. He was meticulous, ambitious, and eager to prove himself. The hospital was massive, 6 floors above ground, 2 basements, and he took the task seriously. For the first few days, Lev stayed late, mapping everything by hand. He used old Soviet blueprints and checked every room, corridor, stairwell, and exit. But on the 5th night, while sketching out the sub-basement level, Lev noticed something strange. There was a room. A perfectly square room. Positioned right between 2 storage areas. The problem was, it was not on any blueprint, not the new ones, not the old Soviet copies, not even the fire damage inspection reports. But it was clearly there, drawn lightly in pencil on the back of one of the floor plans. The next morning, Lev brought 2 contractors with him, Pavel and Ivan. Both were ex-military, now working in demolition. He told them, "There's an empty cavity behind these walls. We need to see inside." They brought in a handheld thermal scanner. At first, the display showed solid brick. But after sweeping the middle of the wall, the screen flickered, then blinked to a dark void in the center. Like a room full of cold air. That wasn't normal. "Maybe an old service room?" Ivan offered. Pavel wasn't convinced. "Why is it sealed with reinforced steel, then?" Lev hadn't noticed the reinforcement before. Behind the plaster and brick, there was a layer of Soviet military-grade plating, welded and bolted in place. Whatever was behind it, someone had gone out of their way to hide it. Lev contacted his supervisor. But he was told bluntly, "We don't have time to chase ghosts. Just finish the floor plan." So, Lev made a decision. He was going to open it anyway. It didn't move at first. But after a solid shove, the hinges groaned and the door opened. Inside was complete darkness. He shone his flashlight in. The room was empty. Concrete walls. No windows. No furniture. No wires or lights. Just a square room, for meters wide. But something was wrong. The sound. There wasn't any. Even the buzzing from his flashlight disappeared when he stepped inside. It was like all sound was being absorbed. Lev backed out of the room and slammed the door shut. He stood there for several minutes, sweating, heart racing. He told himself it was a trick of the light. That the room was messing with his senses. He returned to his office and documented everything. But something had changed. His ears wouldn't stop ringing. A low hum, just on the edge of hearing. That night he dreamed of the room. Only it wasn't empty. It was breathing. The walls pulsed in and out like lungs. And the thing in the corner had moved closer. Lev woke up gasping. The dreams became louder. Not in sound, but in presence. He started to see it in reflections, shapes that didn't match his own. A figure standing just behind him in windows, in water, in his office mirror. It was always there. And then the drawings began. Lev found sketches on his desk, ones he didn't remember making. They showed the room, over and over. But it kept changing. In one sketch, it had 3 doors. In another, the walls were covered in faces. One disturbing drawing showed Lev himself, curled in the center, with hands coming out of the floor. He tried to destroy them. The next time Lev dreamed of the room, he was no longer outside it. He was inside. Except now, the walls had grown taller. The ceiling was gone. And hovering above him was an eye. Not symbolic. Not metaphorical. An actual, massive, lidless, wet human eye. It didn't blink. It stared. And with its stare came sound. A deep, cracking voice inside his skull. "You opened me!" Lev woke up screaming. He ran to the site that night. Alone again. The hallway where the room should have been was different. Longer. Narrower. Like the building had subtly changed shape. He walked toward the wall, where the metal door had once been. It wasn't there. This time, the door opened on its own. Slowly. Quietly. And inside, the room had changed. Instead of concrete, the walls were made of mirrors. Each one showed Lev. But not as he was. They showed versions of him. In one, he was covered in ash, with hollow eyes. In another, he had no face at all. One mirror showed him laughing, covered in blood. He tried to look away. But the mirrors followed his gaze. And in the center of the room was a chair. An old, rotting, leather-bound chair bolted to the floor. He took one step toward it. Every mirror cracked. The voice returned. "You sat in me before. You brought others. Now you stay." Lev fell to his knees. His hands trembled. He tried to run, but the door behind him was gone. Only mirrors now. And every single one showed him aging rapidly. His hair turning white. His skin cracking. Then all the reflections smiled. But Lev did not. Lev wasn't seen again. The firm filed a missing persons report, but no investigation followed. 2 weeks later, the architecture firm suffered a data breach. Several files were stolen. Mostly blueprints. But one file stood out. Project file #041X, Sub-Basement Anomaly, Hospital 41. The file was encrypted. It included hand-drawn sketches, audio logs, and one short video clip. The video showed a shaky recording from Lev's camcorder. It was only 37 seconds long. In the frame, the mirrored room, Lev was visible in the reflection. He looked directly into the lens and said, "If you find this, do not map the room. It draws you in through memory. It lives off what you've lost. Close the door. Or you'll see yourself, from the wrong side." Then the tape cut to static. In 2003, a Russian university professor studying lost Soviet sites received the file anonymously. She opened it on a secure server. Less than a week later, she was hospitalized for acute catatonia. The only words she repeated were, "The door was never closed." Her computer was destroyed in a fire 3 days later. The origin of the file remains unknown. In 2011, demolition crews finally began tearing down what remained of Hospital 41. The workers reported strange layout issues. Walls that didn't connect. Rooms that led nowhere. Doors appearing overnight. One worker refused to go into the basement at all. He claimed he saw someone walking behind him in the mirror of the break room, except there was no mirror there. Another worker, a welder named Grisha, went missing for 3 days. He returned, silent, dazed, and quit on the spot. He wouldn't speak, but he did leave a note. "The floor plan is a lie. We're the plan. The room draws blueprints of us." The demolition was paused. All personnel rotated out. But one final scan was made. It was a 3D LiDAR rendering of the substructure. The scan found a perfectly square void under the rubble. No entry point. No door. Just a space. 4 meters by 4 meters. Still cold. Still pulsing. Still there. He came out of the woods. But he wasn't him anymore. Some people return from the wild. But not all of them come back alone. In the vast, forested stretches of northern British Columbia, where logging towns are small and roads vanish into wilderness, a 24-year-old university student named Connor Blake disappeared while on a camping trip. It was late August 2014. Connor, a quiet but well-liked environmental science major from the University of Alberta, had joined two friends, Mason and Tyler, on a weekend retreat to study fungal growth in the subalpine forests. They were headed for a remote trail near the Driftwood River, an area not far from the Babine Mountains. Locals rarely went there. Too isolated. Too many legends. Connor had grown up hearing some of them. His uncle used to warn him, half-jokingly. If the trees start whispering, turn around. They're not whispering to you. They're warning everything else. The trio left Friday morning. By Sunday evening, only Mason and Tyler returned. They looked disoriented. Exhausted. Mason had scratches all over his arms. Tyler refused to speak. When they were questioned by authorities, their stories barely matched. Mason said Connor had wandered off to photograph mushrooms early Saturday morning and never came back. Tyler claimed Connor was acting strange the night before. Kept staring at the tree line, muttering something under his breath. It sounded like counting, Tyler whispered. Over and over. Like he was keeping track of something. Search teams scoured the area for a full week. They found nothing. No blood. No signs of a struggle. No clothing. Not even a footprint. Connor Blake was declared missing. Presumed dead. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. 6 weeks later, just as the snow began to dust the upper tree line, a man walked into the small service station near Grand Isle, a village not far from the original campsite. He was barefoot. Clothes torn. Covered in dirt, scratches, and pine needles. The station attendant, a 62-year-old named Clara, recognized him instantly. "Oh my God, that's Connor Blake!" She called the police immediately. He was taken to the local hospital and treated for dehydration and minor hypothermia. Connor said very little. When asked where he'd been, he simply replied, "I don't remember." He passed every basic cognitive test. Knew his name, birth date, parents' names, but couldn't recall a single detail about the 6 weeks he'd been gone. Doctors said it could be trauma-induced dissociative amnesia. His parents drove out to see him the next morning. His mother sobbed when she saw him. She tried to hug him. Connor didn't react. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared at her like she was a photograph. His father noticed something else. Connor was left-handed. Always had been. Now he used his right. He said it felt more natural. That was just the beginning. After a week of observation, Connor was discharged from the hospital. But instead of returning to Edmonton with his parents, he requested to stay in the area. He said he needed time. A family friend owned a hunting cabin deeper in the woods, about 30 kilometers north of Grand Isle. Isolated, no running water, just a wood stove and an old radio. Against better judgment, they let him go. He promised to check in weekly. The first call came as scheduled. His voice was calm. Even cheerful. "The trees are quiet," he said. "It's better here. I think I'm remembering things." But every call after that grew stranger. "They're learning to mimic the wind now. Clever. I found a tree that bleeds. I marked it so I don't forget where. There's a shape I keep seeing out the window. It doesn't knock, it just waits." His mother begged him to come home. He refused. Then the calls stopped entirely. When the RCMP conducted a welfare check, the cabin was empty. No signs of a struggle. But the walls inside had been covered in carvings. Dozens of them. Each one was a circle. And inside every circle, an eye. Connor stood on the front step like nothing had happened. He was clean. Clothed. Calm. He smiled. "Hi, Mom. Dad. I'm sorry I worried you." His mother collapsed into tears. But his father couldn't move. He kept staring at Connor's eyes. They were a different color. Connor's had always been hazel. Now they were pale gray. He brushed it off. "Maybe it's the lighting." But the unease only grew. Connor stayed in his old room that night. His mother made his favorite meal. He said all the right things. Talked about his professors, his bike, the dog they used to have. But his memories were wrong. He insisted their old dog was named Rusty. It was actually Cooper. He said his bedroom used to be blue. It had always been green. At 2:17 a.m., his father woke up to the sound of the hallway floor creaking. He stepped out of bed quietly. Saw Connor standing in the dark. Just standing. Facing the hallway mirror. Not moving. His reflection was smiling. But Connor wasn't. His father called out, "Connor?" Connor didn't turn around. Instead, his reflection raised its hand, but he didn't. His father gasped. Connor finally turned slowly, as if he had to remember how. "Dad," he said. "Sometimes the mirror shows things early. Don't worry. I'll catch up." The RCMP was notified. They reviewed the photograph but dismissed the shadowy figure as a trick of the light. Connor's case was reopened as a voluntary disappearance. His parents weren't convinced. They decided to go back to the place it all started. Driftwood River. They drove up that weekend, bringing the photograph and Connor's journal. The weather was cold. Fog hung low over the trees. They parked near the last known campsite and began hiking in. Mason and Tyler had both moved out of Province. They couldn't be reached. But the trail was still there. Barely. Overgrown. Quiet. Too quiet. After 4 hours, they found a clearing. A perfect circle. Just like Connor described. Dead leaves. No growth. Silent. At the center, a blackened patch of soil. His father bent down. The soil was warm. They heard a noise. Not from the woods. From beneath. Like whispering under the earth. His mother stepped back, terrified. Then they saw the tree. Tall. Ancient. Its bark was split down the center. Inside the split, something shimmered. A surface. Like glass. His father reached out. His reflection moved first. Then the glass blinked. They ran. Back in Granile, a wildfire warning was issued that night. A fast-moving blaze had been detected near the Babine Mountains. Started in the hollow. But firefighters who arrived at the scene found something they couldn't explain. The fire had stopped at the tree line. Dead center in the hollow, the soil had burned in a perfect circle. But the trees were untouched. No flames spread. No smoke beyond the ring. And in the very center, a single item was found. Connor's tape recorder. Still running. The last recording. "I broke the mirror. I ran. But I'm not sure I made it. If something else comes out of the woods, it's not coming out alone. I think I'm still in there." Then static. And the sound of leaves crunching. From inside the tape. 6 months later, in early spring, a hiker named Ava LeClaire was trekking a lesser-known trail near Babine Lake. Not really. Sometimes, late at night, they say they hear scratching in the walls. Or footsteps in the attic. The attic they never had. And on one occasion, when his mother looked in the bathroom mirror, she saw him. Just standing there. Behind her. Smiling. But when she turned around, there was nothing. Nothing but the faint sound of leaves crunching underfoot. Some stories begin with a phone screen, a quiet night, and a smile. But some of them end in silence. This is the story of Raina Kurniawan, a girl who went live on TikTok and never came back. What happened that night was watched by thousands. And yet, no one has ever been able to explain what they saw. It started as a routine stream. A cozy night, lo-fi music, tea in hand, and her usual viewers watching. But within minutes, something began to shift. Something subtle. And by the end of that night, Raina was gone. No one saw her leave. No one heard a scream. Just darkness. Raina was 17. She lived alone in a cost room in Bekasi, Indonesia. Her room was small but neat. White walls, one window, fairy lights on the ceiling, a desk, and a thin twin-size bed. On TikTok, she wasn't famous, but she had a loyal following. Around 40,000 people who loved her chill live streams. No makeup tutorials, no dances. Just soft music, tea, and stories. She called them her Malum friends. Her nighttime companions. Her lives were always after 11 p.m. She'd drink green tea and tell stories, weird dreams, local horror legends, unsolved disappearances. Her tone? Calm. Smooth. Like she was letting you in on a secret. To her viewers, Raina was comforting. A safe voice in the middle of the night. But behind that voice, she carried something heavier. A loneliness she never really talked about. She had moved to the city just a few months earlier. Her parents lived far away, and she preferred the quiet freedom of her own space. It suited her. But it also made her vulnerable. What most people didn't know was that Raina had been experiencing sleep paralysis episodes. She once mentioned it briefly in a story, waking up at night, unable to move, feeling something watching her. But she had laughed it off. That night, Raina posted a story that simply said, "Going live tonight. Had a weird dream. Need to talk about it." 11:04 p.m. The live began. She wore a black hoodie. Hair tied up in a bun. Her cat, Luna, slept near her pillow. Soft lo-fi music played. Her voice was gentle. "Hi Malum friends. I had a dream last night. Someone was in my room. Standing. Not moving. I couldn't see their face." Comments rolled in. Asterisk. "OMG stop loudly crying face." Asterisk. "Real?" Asterisk. "Don't scare us, Rye." She laughed nervously. "But today, I keep hearing knocks. I thought it was the room upstairs. But..." Then, asterisk bang, asterisk. A knock. Loud. Deep. Off-screen. She froze. The chat exploded. "Who was that? Rye, check the door." She stood up slowly. Walked off-screen. 10 seconds of silence. Then 3 knocks. Knock. 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 She came back. Pale. Shaking. Typed. Asterisk. "No one's there. But it's freezing outside my door." Asterisk. Her voice started to tremble slightly. "I'm not joking. My lights flickered earlier too. And Luna keeps staring at the same corner of the room." She tried to continue the live, talking about her dream, but she kept getting distracted. Her eyes drifted toward the corner near her wardrobe. She stopped mid-sentence once and stared, as if she saw something move. Then she said something strange. "Last night I woke up, but I couldn't move. And I heard someone breathing in my room. Not me. Not Luna. Just heavy breathing." The chat fell silent for a second. Then one viewer commented, "Rye, are you sure you're alone?" 11:16 p.m. The stream glitched. For one frame, less than half a second, a shadow appeared behind her. Tall. Thin. Still. Right by the window. She didn't seem to notice. But the viewers did. They replayed it. Slowed it down. Frame by frame. It wasn't a trick of the light. It had shoulders. Arms. A shape. Some claimed to see eyes. Others said it looked like a veil. "I'm gonna end early tonight. Something feels wrong." She reached for her phone. The screen went black. But in the last half second, her face changed. She looked up. Eyes wide. Like she saw something above the phone. The live ended at 11:17 p.m. Some users who watched the stream said they heard a faint whisper right before it cut out. It wasn't clear. Just a breathy sound. One person claimed to hear the words, "She sees me." Raina didn't post the next morning. Or that night. Her Discord was quiet. No messages. No replies. By the following afternoon, her friend Inda went to check on her. Knocked. No answer. The landlord opened the room with the master key. Inside. Asterisk laptop still on. Asterisk lights still glowing. Asterisk cup of tea half full. Cat asleep on the pillow. But Raina was gone. No signs of a break-in. No struggle. The door was locked from the inside. Her phone was still mounted on the tripod. Everything undisturbed. Her shoes were still by the door. Her wallet untouched. It was like she had evaporated. Even her toothbrush was still wet. Forensics found an unpublished video draft on her phone. 13 seconds. Pointed at the ceiling. Nothing but static hum. Until second 10. Breathing. Second 11. A whisper. She's not here anymore. It wasn't Raina's voice. It wasn't a known contact. Audio analysts tried to isolate the voice. The frequency was strange, not fully human. Almost layered. Like two voices overlapping. One voice deep. One whispering. Both in sync. The metadata showed it was recorded seconds after the stream ended. Which means something, or someone, turned the camera back on. The breathing didn't sound like human breathing. It was too even, too mechanical. Almost rehearsed. Online forums exploded with theories. A stalker used her live to track her. It was a paranormal event. She faked her own disappearance. But nothing added up. There was no ransom demand. No digital trace. No passport activity. Her room's only window was locked from the inside. No fire escape. No tunnel. Some users analyzed the glitch frame. The shadow behind her matched a figure from Javanese folklore. A spirit known for latching on to lonely young women. They called it Si Penungu, the Watcher. Another claimed to enhance the audio and heard a second voice whispering, "Don't look behind you." A TikTok urban legend emerged. If you watch her stream at exactly 11:17 p.m., the moment it ended, strange things begin to happen. People claim their lights flicker. Phones freeze. Some say they see a face behind them in the dark. One person even said their Alexa device repeated her last words. Something feels wrong. In the last 0.2 seconds of the live, right before blackout, Raina looks up. Her eyes go wide. Her mouth opens slightly. Like she saw something. But there's no time to react. Just black. No sound. No light. No scream. Just gone. Her expression, captured in a screenshot, is now infamous. It has circulated online, analyzed endlessly. One digital artist rendered it in 3D. Another AI tried to reconstruct the shadow. But nothing feels conclusive. Only this: she was afraid. Deeply afraid. And whatever she saw, she wasn't expecting it. Raina Kurniawan has been missing for over a year. Her room remains untouched. Her cat was adopted by Inda. The live stream? Archived. Analyzed. Haunted. Some say it was a ghost. Some say it was something else. But one thing is clear. She didn't just vanish. Something took her. So the next time you go live, especially at night, make sure you're really